I thought working the night shift at McDonald's was just another boring job, until I learned the rules I was never supposed to break. You wouldn't believe what happened next. The McDonald's I worked at? It was the only 24-hour one around for miles, sitting in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't the kind of place you'd expect to find people hanging around. You know, just a gas station and an old motel across the street. Quiet. Too quiet. You'd think working there would be nothing out of the ordinary, but there was something about the place, something that felt wrong from the start. But back then, I didn't know what was coming. I needed the money. So, I took the job. And at first, it was all about the paycheck. I wasn't looking for anything special, just a way to pay off some bills and get by. I was trying to get my life together, you know? Things had been tough for a while, and a night shift at McDonald's seemed like a decent enough option. What could go wrong? So, I showed up for my shift, figuring it would be just another dull night. Maybe clean up a bit, serve a few customers, go home, and call it a day. But the moment I walked into that place, I should have known something was different. The McDonald's was tucked far away from the hustle and bustle. The nearest building was miles down the road. It felt like the world just kind of forgot about it. It was like stepping into a forgotten corner of the world, the kind of place you don't really think about unless you absolutely have to. And maybe that's what made it feel so off, like no one cared enough to really notice what was happening there. The first thing I noticed, though, was when my manager handed me a laminated sheet with rules. She didn't explain much. Just handed it to me and said, "Follow these, and you'll be fine." At first, I thought it was some sort of joke. The kind of thing people do to mess with new hires. But, looking at her face, I saw she wasn't kidding. The smile she gave me wasn't a comforting one, it was tight, like she was hiding something. She didn't give me much else, just these weird, almost cryptic rules: always give the exact number of ketchup packets, no more, no less. If a customer orders something off the menu, ask for a receipt. If they can't provide it, close the window. Never, ever say Ronald McDonald's name out loud after midnight. If the fryer turns on by itself, drop 3 fries into it. Don't mention the crackling noises on the intercom. If the fryer keeps acting up, repeat the 3 fries until it stays off. I just stared at the paper, not knowing if I was supposed to laugh or be scared. "Just follow the rules, and you'll be fine," she said, but the way her lips were pressed together, like she was hiding something, didn't exactly make me feel comfortable. The first night went by without much happening. It was quiet, just like I expected. I kept myself busy cleaning up the soda fountains, browsing TikTok on my phone, and glancing over at the Ronald McDonald statue in the corner every now and then. You know, the life-sized one, the one that used to look so creepy when I was younger? Sitting on the bench with that fake smile. But, that's when it started. I was standing near the fryer, restocking some napkins when I heard it, the sudden crackling sound of the fryer turning on by itself. I froze. The fryer wasn't supposed to do that. At least, not unless you turned it on manually. I glanced at the laminated sheet, and that rule flashed in my mind: if the fryer turns on by itself, drop 3 fries. I didn't think twice. I grabbed 3 frozen fries, dropped them in, and watched as the oil crackled and hissed. But after a second, it stopped. The fryer shut off, just like that. I felt a little uneasy but shook it off. Probably just malfunctioning, I told myself. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling. Something didn't sit right. I turned my attention back to the milkshake machine for a moment, but I couldn't help but glance over at the Ronald statue again. It was just sitting there. But for some reason, it felt like its eyes were on me now. I thought I saw a flicker of movement, like its eyelids shifted, like it was winking at me. I laughed it off, thinking, I must be tired. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't help but feel like something was wrong. It wasn't just the friar or the weird statue that got to me. I started noticing small things. Like the shadows in the corner of my eyes. Little things moving that shouldn't be. I'd catch the reflection of the milkshake machine, and for a split second, I thought I saw something, or someone, standing behind me. But when I turned around, there was nothing. I started to question myself. Was I imagining things? It was late, and I hadn't slept much lately, but still. I looked back at the Ronald statue again, trying to focus on something other than the strange feeling creeping up my spine. That stupid statue with its chipped paint and goofy grin. But then, there it was again. A shift in its eye. A subtle movement. It wasn't much, but enough to make me stop in my tracks. I swear I saw it wink at me. I mumbled under my breath. But no. I couldn't let myself believe it. It was probably just the lights or the angle. I must have been tired. It was just an old statue. Right? But for the rest of the night, I couldn't shake that feeling. Something was watching me. And it wasn't just the statue. The whole place felt off. Too quiet. Too still. I had to keep my focus. I couldn't let myself get lost in thoughts like that. I had work to do. But deep down, I knew something was different. Something was wrong. I'd gotten used to the usual customers by now, truckers on long hauls, the occasional late-night snacker, nothing too out of the ordinary. But then, a black sedan pulled up to the drive-thru. I opened the window, ready to take the order, but instead of the usual greeting or a menu request, the driver handed me a blank receipt. No words. Just a receipt with nothing on it. I stared at it for a moment, unsure of what to do. I looked up at the driver, but they didn't say anything. They just pointed. Slowly. Their finger moved toward the menu board, but it wasn't just their finger anymore. It was wrong. The hand wasn't human anymore. It looked like a claw, long and bony, with nails that seemed too sharp for a normal hand. It stretched out towards the menu with an eerie, deliberate motion. I froze, my throat tightening. That was wrong, I whispered to myself. My fingers trembled as I slammed the window shut, the sound of it snapping into place sharp in the silence of the night. But the car didn't leave. The headlights flickered on and off, like some kind of warning. The car sat there, silent. Still. The engine hummed low in the dark, but the car didn't move. I kept staring at it, my heart thudding in my chest. It's nothing. Just a strange night. You're overreacting, I told myself. But it didn't feel like nothing. Not anymore. As I stood there, still watching the black sedan in the dim light, the intercom crackled to life. I wasn't prepared for what came next. A low, guttural voice came through the speaker. I'll have a happy meal, hold the happy. My hands went cold. I ripped the headset off, throwing it down on the counter. That voice, it wasn't right. It sounded too deep, too distorted. And the words, they didn't make sense. I stood there for a second, trying to calm myself. But before I could do anything, another car pulled up to the window. This time, it was a man in a trench coat. His face was hidden in the shadows of his wide-brimmed hat, and his voice was almost too calm. A simple order, a Big Mac combo, extra pickles. I handed him the bag, but as he drove off, something was wrong. His car, no, it wasn't a car. It was floating. No wheels. No headlights. I blinked hard, staring at the empty spot where his car had been. Was I hallucinating? This can't be happening, I thought. But then, another customer pulled up, a woman in a minivan. She had stringy hair and a twisted smile that stretched across her face. Large coffee, black, she said, never once blinking. I handed her the cup, but she didn't take it. Instead, she smiled even wider. "You forgot the sugar," she whispered. I froze. She didn't take the coffee. She didn't move. Her eyes never blinked, and her laughter, lingered in the air long after she drove off. It was the kind of laugh that made your skin crawl. The kind of laugh that stays with you long after. By now, I was shaking. I'd done my best to ignore everything, to keep my head down and just get through the shift. But it was getting harder. Then, the fryer turned on again. I heard it hiss to life, but this time, it wasn't just a flicker. It was loud, violent. The grease in the fryer started bubbling furiously, splashing out onto the floor. I froze, remembering the rule about the fryer. 3 fries, I muttered under my breath. I grabbed 3 frozen fries and dropped them in, but it didn't stop. The fryer just kept hissing, the oil bubbling like it was alive. I glanced over at the Ronald McDonald statue across the room. The one that had always sat there, lifeless, an old fiberglass figure that never moved. But this time, the eyes. They weren't just staring anymore. They were following me. I turned quickly, trying to shake off the feeling, but when I looked back, the statue's eyes were still fixed on me, as though it had been watching me the whole time. I couldn't explain it. But the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I couldn't look away from the statue. It felt like it was alive. And then, something even worse happened. I looked outside, through the darkened windows, and there it was. A figure. A clown, standing just at the edge of the parking lot. It didn't move. It just stood there, staring at me. Its face was pale, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The smile, it was too wide, stretching far too much for any normal person. The figure didn't make a sound. It just watched. And then, as I stared, the Ronald statue shifted. Its arm moved. Slowly. Methodically. It pointed straight at me, the finger stretching towards the window where the clown stood, almost like it was urging me to look. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I had to get myself together. I had to make it through the night. But when the next car pulled up, something changed. The rules. I wasn't sure I could keep following them. But I didn't know what else to do. A car pulled up, and it was the same thing again. The driver handed me a blank receipt. I should have followed the rule. I should have closed the window. But I didn't. I let them order a milkshake. And that was my mistake. I turned to grab the milkshake, my heart thudding in my chest. When I looked back, the car was gone. The seat was empty. And there, pouring out from the window, was black mist. I stood there, frozen, staring at the empty spot where the car had been. Something was wrong. It wasn't just strange anymore. It was terrifying. I felt the weight of the moment, the weight of breaking the rules. The rules that I thought would protect me. But they didn't. They couldn't. Something was coming for me. The clock ticked closer to the end of my shift, but I knew I wasn't going to make it. Not now. The rules couldn't save me anymore. The clown outside started moving. Slow. Deliberate. Its footsteps echoed through the parking lot, each one heavier than the last. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't run. The Ronald statue, it was still pointing. It was as if the clown was getting closer with every step, and no matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop it. I was stuck. And then the lights started flickering. The fryer hissed again, louder than ever. I was trapped. Trapped in this nightmare, with no way out. It was like everything collapsed in on me all at once. The clown outside, the one who had been standing motionless, staring at me with that twisted smile, was moving. At first, it was slow. Too slow. Each step it took felt like a drumbeat. 1 step. 2 steps. My breath caught. Don't look, I kept telling myself, but I couldn't help it. I had to know. I glanced back at the door. That was when I saw him. The man from the sedan, the one with the clawed hand, was standing there. But he wasn't the same anymore. He wasn't even close. His body was wrong. Twisted. The shadows had wrapped around him, making him look even bigger, even more distorted. His face was stretched and misshapen, barely recognizable. The claws, those horrible, long fingers, were even more pronounced, scraping against the floor like they were searching for something to grab onto. I tried to step back, but my feet wouldn't move. I was frozen. The air felt thick, like I was suffocating. I turned to run, but that's when it happened. The door, that door, it burst open with a loud crash, and the clown was there, right in front of me, blocking my way. I didn't even know how it had gotten inside. One moment it was standing outside, and the next, it was in front of me, its glowing eyes wide, its smile even wider. It was like the nightmare had come to life. Behind me, I heard the soft scraping of plastic. I turned, and the Ronald McDonald statue, the one I had tried to ignore, wasn't still anymore. It was moving. Its eyes locked onto mine. The smile on its face grew bigger, and I could swear I heard a voice. A voice that shouldn't be coming from a lifeless statue. "You broke the rules," it said. Its tone was taunting, almost as if it was enjoying my terror. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to run, to escape, but the door was blocked. The clown was closing in, and the man from the sedan, or whatever he was just standing there, waiting for me to make a move. Everything was closing in on me. The rules I had followed, the ones I thought would save me, didn't mean anything anymore. I was trapped. Then, through the haze of fear, one thought cut through. The final rule. If you're still alive at 5 a.m., lock the doors, turn off the lights, and pray. It felt like the only thing that could save me. I had no other choice. I ran to the back door, my hands shaking as I grabbed the key, fumbling to unlock it. The whole time, the clown's laughter echoed in my ears, loud and manic. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I shoved the door open and slammed it shut behind me. I ran to the front. The lights were already dimming, but I quickly switched them off. The hum of the machines, the sounds of the fryer, everything seemed to go still. The only sound was the wind outside and the faint sound of footsteps approaching. I locked every door. Every single one. The back door, the side door, even the storage room. The building felt like a cage, but I didn't care anymore. It was 4:59 a.m. I sat in the corner, waiting. The seconds stretched into minutes. I kept my head down, muttering the rule over and over in my head. Just survive until 5 a.m. Just survive until 5 a.m. But the clock ticked slowly, and I couldn't stop the feeling that something was wrong. The moment the clock hit 5 o'clock, the building felt different. Lighter. Like the air had changed. I stood up, breathing a little easier. I had made it. It was over. I thought I was free. I thought it was finally over. I made my way to the door, took a deep breath, and opened it. The first light of day greeted me. The world outside felt normal. The silence, the peace, it was almost soothing. I made my way to my car, a nervous laugh escaping my lips. I was finally going home. But as I sat in the driver's seat, ready to start the engine, I froze. On the passenger seat, the laminated rules sheet. I didn't remember picking it up. I didn't remember seeing it at all. But there it was, sitting on the seat like it had always been there. I stared at it for a moment, the weight of the situation sinking in. Had it followed me? I couldn't do this. Not anymore. I couldn't go back. But I knew what would happen. I would be back. I threw the rules sheet out the window, my hand trembling as I slammed the car into gear and sped off. But the words stayed with me. I couldn't escape them. They always come back. The next day, I didn't even want to think about it. I tried to move on. But then my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from Linda. Just checking in. Heard you had an eventful night. Don't worry, it happens to all the new hires. See you tonight at 8. You're on the schedule. I stared at my phone. My heart sank. I had quit. I was sure of it. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was going back.